My wife and I met when we were juniors in college, and that Christmas I went out to visit her family in Montana. Uh, Her last name is Marcello, her maiden name. So she comes from an Italian family. And that first Christmas meeting with her family, I met her uncle, Guido. Guido worked as a butcher, had lost 3 of his fingers and half of his index finger. So when he shook your hand, it really was a vice, grabbing it like that. And he said to me, I understand that you and Bobby are serious about each other. And he said, I want to know that you'll take good care of her, while he's squeezing my hand. And he says, I'm her godfather, Guido. I'm a butcher. You be good to her. Well, the rest of the Marcello family, they were all huggers. So I'm standing there and they're coming up to me and they're hugging me. And I came from a family where we didn't really hug. So it was uncomfortable for me. And I said, okay, this is going to take a little bit of time to get used to. Little did I know that I was going to learn so much about life from her family. Her grandmother was married, had 6 kids. Her husband, John Marcello, died at 50 from black lung disease. So she became a single mom with 6 kids under the age of 15. So she did not have an easy life. And when she was in her early 70s, she got very ill, seriously ill. They had her in the hospital, and the doctors basically told the family, she doesn't have long to live. There's nothing else we can do with her. So take her home and have her be with family. Well, they brought her home. It was just before Christmas. And on Christmas Day, Grandma Maudie woke up and said, this is a good day. She lived to 99. Now, where did Grandma Maudie find the strength to live those additional years after really a very difficult life and this very difficult illness? Well, Grandma Maudie had 2 things that she loved to do. She loved to have people come to visit her. And when they came to visit, she made sure everyone felt welcome, provided the food, the drinks, and was just absolutely thrilled that she could be the hostess, could help people have that celebration time, that fun time, that time with family and friends. And when her guests left, she was glad that you were gone. Because the other thing that Grandma Maudie loved to do was to read. And she read all of the books at the Red Lodge Public Library, which happened to be from the Carnegie Foundation. So the good works that we do in Rotary are those kinds of things where we're planting seeds that people benefit from for many, many years. Grandma Maudie read all of the books in the Red Lodge Public Library, including some of the racing ones. And she said that she read because it helped her improve her English. She was an immigrant from Italy. And those were her 2 favorite things to do. So instead of describing her day based on what was happening, Grandma Maudie woke up every morning, as she did on that Christmas day, and said, today's a good day. And I think it's something that we can embrace. It doesn't matter what's happening around us. Those are the circumstances. What matters is how we interact with each other, how we take action, how we support each other, how we make a difference in the world. To Grandma Maudie, every day is a good day. Each day that we wake up, I think we should be saying, I'm glad I'm a Rotarian today. Now, how can I make the world better as a result of that? Bobby's dad, Albino Giovanni Baptista Marcello, was a doctor, a general surgeon. And Bino, as he was known, worked until he was 69, and then he retired. And rather than retire to be at leisure, Bino said, I have a number of things that I want to learn and do. He had been so busy as a doctor, he didn't have time to play golf. So he said, I want to learn how to play golf. He said, I want to go on the elder hospitals in different countries and the Native American reservations to learn about those cultures. He began to do Kachina dolls, which are the Hopi Indian spirit dolls, and would carve them out of the root and then clothe them, and had a curio case or two with all of his Kachina dolls. He also said that he wanted to learn a new language. At the time, our kids were in middle school. They were both taking Spanish. So Grandpa Bino, they didn't winter in Billings, Montana. They wintered in Tucson, Arizona. So he enrolled at Pima Community College to take Spanish classes so that he could talk with his grandkids in Spanish. And he would cut out rabanitos, which is peanuts in Spanish, from the local paper. He'd put them together, and every week he would mail the rabanitos cartoons to John and Kate, and they would open them up, and they would be reading them and laughing. And then Grandpa Bino would call, and they would have their conversation in Spanish. So he didn't tell them learning another language is a good thing to do. He was showing them that learning another language is a good thing to do. So he became their fellow learner, not just their grandfather. And I know that it developed a different relationship with his grandkids because he was participating with them in that learning process. So he had a long list of things that he wanted to learn. My dad, when he retired, really retired and said, okay, I'm getting old. Well, I watched my father become sort of an old, grumpy man. I watched my father-in-law become a vibrant, interesting adventurer, and he lived until he was 90. So I believe that Bino's approach to learning, and it wasn't just what he was learning, but he would share it with other people then. He would tell the stories of the Hopi Indian spirit dolls, the Kachina dolls. And he was learning Spanish along with John and Kate. So learning, I believe, keeps our minds sharp. Learning helps us get out of our comfort zone. And I like to say that when we're in our comfort zone, we're not really learning. When we step out of our comfort zone, we have to learn in order to get comfortable in that new setting. So I believe that it does. It keeps our mind sharp. I think it engages us in the world in a much better way. So learn. What do you want to learn? What can you learn? And then how do you share what you're learning with others? Very powerful lesson from my father-in-law, Bino. My wife, Bobby, she's a Roberta. Interestingly, both of us were named after men that died in World War II. She was named after her uncle, Robert, who was in a sea accident in World War II. And I was named after my dad's high school basketball buddy, who died in Europe near the end of World War II. But Bobby and I met, and we just celebrated our 42nd wedding anniversary on July 11th. I think we lived in Michigan. When I told her that we were, I was considering a job in Texas, and we came for the visit, she looked at me and she said, "Oh, George, this is going to be really good for you." And I said, "Why?" She said, "Because you'll never forget our wedding anniversary." Because in Texas, 7-Eleven stores at the time, there weren't 7-Eleven stores in Michigan. So this was a reminder on every corner, 7-Eleven, that's our wedding anniversary. Well, Bobby takes an approach to our anniversary, much like Yogi Berra did in his contracts with the New York Yankees. Yogi Berra played 18 years for the Yankees on 18 one-year contracts. Now, if you think about one-year contracts, it says that you agree that you're going to be together for that next year. And at the end of that year, you review how did that year go, and what do we need to do to make this next year a good year for both of us. So Bobby takes that approach with our wedding anniversary. We don't celebrate our anniversary. We negotiate the next year. And as you think about it, our situations in our lives change from year to year. So the needs of a couple also change. And that opportunity to sit down and say, we had some good things happen this past year, but what's coming up this year? How can we support each other in a way that makes it beneficial for each of us? So we take that approach. Our July 11th anniversary, we were actually at Theater Capelle. I'm currently in a show called Curtains, which is a musical. It's a comedy whodunit about a musical group that's trying to take their show to Broadway. They open up in Boston. Opening night, the leading lady is killed, so everybody in the cast and crew is a suspect. And it is a very funny show. Well, July 11th, we were rehearsing for the show. And Bobby said, when you're older, it's always good when people say, what do you do for fun? To have something that you can say, I do for fun. And we do community theater. We've both been on stage in a number of different roles. And it is that recognition that when we're active and involved and supported, she happens to be one of the technical support people in this show, and our son, John, is in the chorus, has a wonderful tenor voice. So John, I also learned a lesson from. When John was in 9th grade, he was failing Spanish, even though he was already conversational. He was working at Cece's Pizza, and a lot of the workers there spoke Spanish. John spoke Spanish to the Hispanic customers that were coming in. He could distinguish the different accents. He knew when someone was from Puerto Rico or Venezuela or Colombia, he could hear the differences. And so he has a language gift, but he was failing 9th grade Spanish. And the school had basically given us this message. If we really work hard with John, if you make sure he gets his homework done, turns it in, we'll make sure that he sits down in class and shuts up, that if we can just get him to graduate from high school, he'll be able to go get a job. And he was in the Madrigals group, which was the old English Renaissance music. And John was the only freshman boy in the Madrigals group. So he was hanging around with the upper class girls, and yet he couldn't perform with them because he had the failing grade in Spanish. And we were sort of at our wits' end, thinking, okay, the school must be right. We have a son who doesn't have much potential. And it was shortly after that I attended a workshop. I was consulting with a company, and the president of the company had a ticket to a workshop at SMU. He handed it to me. He says, I'm not able to go today. Would you go instead? So I went instead of him. And the presenter was a woman by the name of Jennifer James. And Jennifer James was talking about multiple forms of intelligence. And she started out her talk with, if you do well on the SATs in math and verbal, it means that you would make a great World War I Army officer if you were a white man from Massachusetts. That was the research base for the SATs. And then she said that our educational system then was built around the SAT structure, the math and verbal. And she said, so the top 10% get to go on to higher education. And it's that focus on math and verbal. And she said, and the rest of the students are basically told just to get along. Do your work, move on. And she said, but there aren't just two forms of intelligence. She said, there are multiple forms of intelligence. She said, there's an intrapersonal intelligence, knowledge of interaction with people. And John is one of those people that he can't meet someone without being curious about finding out about them, making them a friend. He truly is about connecting with others. When I asked him why he was taking Spanish, he said, well, Dad, I want to be able to connect with Spanish speakers. He didn't say I want to be able to communicate with them. He said I want to be able to connect with them. So John has a high interpersonal intelligence. Intrapersonal intelligence, knowledge of self. John knows he has to self-manage. He has some minor physical disabilities due to cerebral palsy, so it takes him more energy to do normal things. So he knows he has to manage himself so that he gets well rested, that he eats the right food, so he doesn't get overtired or overexert himself. So he has that high knowledge of when he's at his best. There's also a mechanical intelligence. How do things work? And my wife came home from work one afternoon, and our son was there with his good buddy John, and they had taken our computer, they had it on the dining room table, and had taken it all apart. And Bobby walked in, and she said, what in the world are you doing? And they said, oh, don't worry. John said, don't worry, Mom. We're making it faster. And they went ahead and did their work, put it all back together, and sure enough, they sped it up. And I realized that was the 57 Chevy. And here the two Johns were working to soup up that computer and make it work better. There's also a physical intelligence, a Michael Jordan, Martha Graham dancer who can do things with their bodies that we can't even imagine doing. But that's another form of intelligence. So as she was going through all of these other forms of intelligence, I'm sitting there saying, John has that, John has that, John has that. And then she said, if you have kids in school, support what they like doing, what their interests are. Because she said, if you do that, it will allow them to get positive recognition at home for things that are often just taken for granted in school. So we began that process of supporting John in what he wanted to do. At the time, we thought he was spending too much time on his computer. Well, after that workshop with Jennifer James, I went home and I said, John, what are you doing on the computer? And he said, let me show you. He was building his own home, his website that was set up by country. So it was the country flag, the country national anthem, and then the people that he was meeting through internet relay chat back in the 90s. And they had their bios and pictures there. So he was organizing all of the people that he was meeting around the world in this international website that he had set up. So it gave us an indication that he had an interest in other people, the Spanish, and now the folks that he was connecting with over the internet. And it didn't surprise us then when John, as a sophomore, came to us and said, Mom and Dad, I'd like to go to the Pan American Jamboree. It's being held in Guatemala. And our first reaction was no. We said, John, it's a week away from school. You've been making progress, but not that much. It's costly. And Guatemala had just gotten over their civil war, so that they had military people on all the corners with rifles. So we said, and it's not very safe. Well, 2 weeks later, he came back to us. He said, Mom and Dad, I talked to all my teachers. They think it would be a great idea if I go. And here are the assignments that I have to complete before I go. And here are the special assignments I get to complete after I get back. And he was pumped up. And then he said, I'm working at CC's. I'm willing to pay half if you're willing to invest the other half. And then he said, and don't worry about our safety. He said, the Pan American Jamboree compound is going to be the safest place in Guatemala because Guatemala can't afford an international incident. So I turned to Bobby and I said, what do you think? And she said, well, he can get into trouble just around the corner. We really don't know what he's doing in his house. So she said, and why does he want to go? And I said, because his best friend, Michael, who has a single mom, wanted to go. And his mom told him, Michael, you can go only if a friend will go with you. So John was going along as that friend. Well, he gets to the Pan American Jamboree, and there are 5 adult leaders who don't speak Spanish. And John became their translator. They go to town for supplies. John would go with them. They go to the leadership meetings of the camp. John would go with them. John got to meet the president of Guatemala because he was the translator. And he came to realize, knowing this other language really is valuable, that it's helpful to other people, that it really does matter. They were also camping next to the Brazilian scouts, and they found they had something in common very quickly. Spanish was the second language for each of them, so they used their Spanish to connect, not to judge how well they spoke Spanish. So John is telling me, sending me emails and saying, boy, I really like the Brazilian scouts. Well, I came to learn that in Brazil, scouting is both boys and girls. So when he was talking about the Brazilian scouts, I finally understood that he was also talking about the girls that were in camp next to him. So he came home with this charge about Brazil, and the Brazilian scouts invited him to come to Brazil the summer between his junior and senior year. And again, we were, John, what are you going to be doing? He said, I'll let you know. So the families were bidding for John's time. They'd say, well, we'll have John in Jundiaí for 2 days, and while he's here, we're going to the museum, the botanical gardens, and the beach. And these were all scout families. These were all people who shared those values, much like Rotarians shared those values around the world. So we're welcome in any Rotary meeting, and Rotarians open their homes and hearts for other Rotarians. John stayed with the Antons the last week he was there, and Mrs. Anton said, John, we'd love to have you come back and learn our language, learn our culture. So John arranged for his own international student exchange, got the Capel Rotary Club to get in touch with the Campo Grande Rotary Club. He went to Brazil, became fluent in Portuguese, completed his Eagle Scout project with his Brazilian volunteers, and found out about a school in Florida, Berry University, which is a Catholic international university, and ended up graduating in 4 years with a 3.2 overall. And this is the kid who didn't have the potential. So supporting kids, I believe every child, every young person has potential and has something special about them. And as concerned adults, I think we can help support, encourage the mentoring we do, the literacy programs that we're doing. We are changing lives through that, but focus on what the children want and need and help them make progress. And then finally, the 5th lesson is from our daughter, Kate. Kate also has physical limitation due to cerebral palsy. She doesn't have complete use of her right hand. Well, when Kate was in middle school, they started her playing the French horn. And she says that the French horn was the horn that God invented for her because it's the only left-handed fingering instrument. The right hand just goes into the belt for stability. Well, when she got to the marching band, she came home and said, Dad, I can't march And I thought it was because of her limitation. And she said, Dad, the marching horn is a right-handed horn. I can't play it. So they're going to put me in the pit percussion. And I said, what's that, Kate? She said, oh, those are the guys that play the percussion instruments on the sidelines. How do you feel about it? I just don't want anybody to yell at me when I play it wrong. I said, Kate, you have my permission. If anybody yells at you, you just say, look, you put me in this position. You have a responsibility to teach me how to play it properly. I have a responsibility to practice and get better. You do your job, I'll do mine, and we'll get along fine. She said, yeah, I can do that. Well, they started her out on the triangle because you can do no damage on the triangle. But they noticed that they had a problem with the big stationary chimes because they had such a strong horn section. So the section leader went to Kate and said, Kate, do you think you could play the chimes, stationary chimes? And she said, well, let me see. She picks up the mallet, hits it, big ringing sound out over the band. She says, yeah, I can do that. Then she went to the leader a little bit later and said, I noticed we're also having a problem with the big stationary bass drum. Could I do that too? And he said, sure, go ahead. So she went over, grabbed it with her helper hand, starts booming away with her strong left arm. Well, that year, the marching band went to state here in Texas, and they took third place overall. And I was there afterwards, and I went and I hugged her. I said, Kate, this is great. She said, Dad, this is the best thing that's ever happened to me. I said, I know, finishing third in state is pretty amazing. She said, no. She said, about being in the percussion group. She said, those percussion guys taught me how to relax and have fun. I never realized how uptight those French horn players are. And it changed Kate. Her varsity letter has the French horn and the percussion on it, a unique combination. But that leader didn't see what Kate couldn't do. He saw what she could do because she used her left arm almost exclusively. She had a strong left arm. And he invited her to use her strength, which she took for granted. And she found other ways to do that. And I believe that that's what we do as Rotarians. We come together with our gifts and talents. We have the shared values, and we look for the good in each other so that together we raise our performance to make a difference in the world. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, George. We appreciate that.
I have a personal question.
Good life lessons. And
Yes.
Tell me a little more about Curtains. When is it playing? How long is it playing?
This coming weekend is the last weekend. It's Friday night, Saturday night, Friday afternoon. It's theater with an RE, Capel.com.
Okay.
And you can go online and see if there's tickets available.
Wonderful. It sounds like a great show.
Yeah, we're having a great time. The cast is very, very talented. Wonderful voices.
And what role do you play?
I am the stage manager in the show. So I have a character who is getting all of the actors and stuff to do what they're supposed to do.
Fantastic. Sounds great. Thank you for a good presentation tonight.
Thank you.
yeah, thank you again. That's great. And we appreciate it. We will have that on a recording, and Chris gets that up. You might be able to view it.
Great.
See it. We'll share that with everybody else who wants to tune into our archives and also see it from that as well. As we are approaching time here to close the meeting, does anybody else have anything to add? All right, I'm going to close the meeting with the four-way test. If y'all will join with me, if you'll stand. We have the four-way test behind us here. Most of y'all know it, I'm sure. The things we think, do, or say. First, is it the truth? Second, is it fair to all concerned? Third, will it build goodwill and better friendships? And fourth, will it be beneficial to all concerned? Thank you for joining us today. The meeting is now adjourned.
Yay, thank you.
Good job, Brett.